We have no audio.
Inshallah ta'ala, we get started. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Alam yanfa'una bima 'allamtana wa lam yanfa'una wa zidna ilman ya kareem ya rabbil alamin. Allahumma nas'aluka ilman nafi'a wa rizqan wasi'a wa shifaa li kulli da'in amin rabbil alamin. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah ta'ala, all of you are doing well. We are continuing on our class on Bani Isra'il and the promised loss on the history of them. And so inshallah ta'ala, we'll continue for that. Just a note, unfortunately, next week I won't be here. I'll be traveling, but we'll continue the following. And I don't like this keep on multiple weeks, but just the nature of the game. Hopefully I don't have to travel too much after that and we can finish it up. Okay. So let me, one second. Okay, there we go. All right. Just as a review, what we went over from last week. So last week we talked about that Bani Isra'il, under their prophet at the time, that was understood to be Samuel, or we say in Arabic Samuel, that requested a king to defeat the Canaanites, right? So they're in this area called Ariha or Jericho, and so they're close to Jerusalem, but not into Jerusalem yet. And so they go ahead and request a king, and so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends them a king, and that is Talut, Saul. And so then they don't really accept him until the Tabut, the Ark of the Covenant, comes back to them. Dawood alayhi salam defeats Goliath, as we all mentioned. We all know that story very much, right? There is something called the United Kingdom of Israel, right? We call it United Kingdom because you're going to see that's going to split in a northern kingdom and a southern kingdom. So this is a title they gave it. I don't think they called it that back in those days. Okay, Dawood alayhi salam is running that kingdom. He comes in as a second king after Samuel, or after Saul. Sorry, was the first king. He was able to cast iron. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions Dawood alayhi salam was given the Zabur. We mentioned also Sulaiman alayhi salam comes after the death of Dawood alayhi salam. Right, he's the son of Dawood, and was able to build a massive palace, or what the Jews will call a temple. We call it a masjid. On that Masjid Aqsa compound, what we know today, if you will. It could have been extended more than that, but nonetheless, it's in that general area. He was able to command the wind, the jinn, and the birds, and he also was able to defeat a lot of the areas around him, extend his kingdom. We talked about black magic during that time. If you guys remember that, we talked about black magic during that time, just an aspect of what Bani Isra'il was kind of involved in. I can't say the whole population was doing that, but a section of that was doing that. And after Sulaiman alayhi salam passed away, we talked about how Sulaiman alayhi salam collected the books of black magic, put it under his arsh, his throne, and then when he passed away, people were able to go down and find it and collect those papers and practice that black magic. Right? Disobedience tractor, pretty much everything that we had from the previous weeks. What I added there was that they didn't want to fight until they received a king, and rejecting that king when they wanted a king. They didn't want him because Talut, Saul, was from a different one of the tribes, if you will. Okay, so that's where we kind of left off from last week. This is a slide talking about the end of Sulaiman alayhi salam's reign. Right, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and we decreed Sulaiman alayhi salam's death. Nothing indicates to the jinn his death except a creature of the earth eating his staff. But when he fell, it became clear to the jinn that if they had known the unseen, they would have remained in humiliating punishment. So Sulaiman alayhi salam is on his throne, right, as a ruling his empire. He has a staff, nothing to do with Musa alayhi salam's staff, and he was leaning on it, and he passed away in that situation or that form. The jinn are working so hard, thinking that he's watching them, or he's sleeping, or doing something. Just showing that the jinn are not super smart in terms of understanding everything that's going on. Yeah, they could fly, they could do other things, and so forth. And they kept on working until an animal was eating the staff, and then Sulaiman alayhi salam fell down. And then they realized that he died. Whether how long that was and how what that period was, Allahu alam, I don't necessarily know. But just to show you that's the way he ended his life. Just a little note on this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just mentioned this how he dies. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also mentions that a body was placed on his throne, like a baby body, if you will, that was not alive. And we didn't really go into the story last week, but what this story is talking about is that how Sulaiman alayhi salam, one thing, even biblical accounts mention this, the Quran really doesn't mention it explicitly, that he had multiple wives and multiple, children and so forth, and that he wanted to have a large progeny. And he didn't say, inshallah, that he would do this, and referring back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so one thing is that this newborn that was born ended up dying and put on a throne as a sign for him that you wanted this, but you didn't relate it back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It wasn't a sin that he did, but just like something a mistake that he made. And so why I bring this up for is that if you go to the Bible, it mentions that Sulaiman alayhi salam, that even though he did have multiple wives, but then he also had these multiple idols that he had. And he worshipped idols, if you will. Okay, that's very, very drastic from what we know of prophets in general and what we know from the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't mention that one even indicate anything like that. And we shouldn't even think that prophets would do that. But for their narration, that he worshipped idols, and there was multiple idols in the kingdom. Okay, and you're going to see this, that after his reign is gone, all the kings that come after and rule for Bani Isra'il are all attached to idol worshiping. Okay, all different type of idols they worship, even though they know they have the Torah, they know who God is, but they are consistently, worshiping other idols, which is going to bring down their throne, if you will. Okay, so we get to this area here, which is called the splitting of the kingdom. So Sulaiman alayhi salam, he passes away. Go back to the biblical text once again. He has a son, and that son ends up ruling after him, and that's where the division starts happening. Okay, and so his son is going to be the ruler of the northern empire, what we call the kingdom of Judah. It's called the kingdom of Judah because the tribe of Yehutha, Judah, is that where that tribe lives at. Also the tribe of Binyamin. So Yusuf alayhi salam's tribe and his brother Binyamin occupied the southern kingdom. Okay, all the other 10 tribes, remember there's 12, okay, are ruling in the north kingdom. So they have a schism within Bani Isra'il. Who should be the leaders? Who has a right for leadership? And there's a lot of kind of civil war kind of going on. Okay.
What's the difference between
Zabur and Torah, very good. So the Torah is what Musa alayhi salam got, has laws, kind of like the Sharia we have in Islam, right? Islamic law. And so that has all the rules of what the Jews, or at least the Bani Israel, are supposed to be following. The Psalms or the Zabur was given to Dawood alayhi salam. We mentioned, I think, last week. Yeah, that doesn't have rules and regulations, but more reminders, if you will, and so forth, right? To kind of soften the hearts of the people. And that's what they kind of needed.
We're supposed to believe both.
We believe both have been, divinely revealed down to mankind, and these to Musa alayhi salam, Dawood alayhi salam. Now, what's in their book today? That is more of a dispute. Inshallah, next week we're going to go. No, I'm not going to do it next week. So 2 weeks from now, we're going to go into an in-depth look in terms of how the Torah or the Old Testament was put together, how authentic it is, what does biblical scholars say about it, and what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about it in the Quran. So we'll get a little bit into that in 2 weeks, inshallah. Okay. So the two main, Judah and the Binyamin tribe, are ruling from the south. The other 10 go to the north. They get their own king that was exiled in Egypt. They told him to come back. You could be our king, and they end up ruling from the north in that area of there. Okay, so there's a schism between these two kingdoms. What else am I going to say? They're the capital in the north is called Samaria, or Samira in Arabic, and then in the south you have Jerusalem, or Quds is what the capital is in the south. So we're going to talk a little bit about the North Kingdom first and foremost. The reason why we talk about them first and foremost, because they fall first before the kingdom of Judah does.
Sorry, I didn't hear. It's the two kingdoms come from Solomon.
No, so after King Suleiman alayhi salam passed away, his son takes over. His name is Rahambon, or I can't pronounce his names very well. And then that's where the schism becomes. It's after the death of Suleiman alayhi salam. Then they split after that. Yeah. They didn't recognize his son very much. They complain about taxation of the north from this king, and they want to create their own ruler and have their own land, if you will.
But that's after the 90 years.
Yes, exactly. Very good, very good. Yeah, I think I put that there. Yes, very good. The kingdom of Dawood did not last more than 90 years, so it wasn't like a really long. 9 years is still a long time, but nonetheless, compared to other kingdoms, if you will. So the kingdom of Israel. We're talking about the north now. Okay, that was from 930 to 722. Always give and take 20 years here. You go to one book, they say 20 years difference. Go to another book, they have a little bit of different references. So just kind of take that time with a grain of salt. So that's still around 210 years, if you will. Okay, so it formed in the part of complaints about taxation. Right, the city was Samaria. The first 60 years after the split between the two nations, there were multiple wars between the two. Okay? Accusations going between the north and the south. Okay? So when we look at our Muslim countries today, you say, why don't they help each other? Why are some of them fighting each other? That's not necessarily a Muslim problem. Right? That's a humanitarian problem, if you will. Unfortunately, the Jews go through a lot of that in their history. Okay, they're not all united, and they're all like one together. We're the promised children. Or promised people of God. They have issues within their own tribes, right? Who actually has the most right of leadership? Okay, their first king, Jeroboam, I guess that's how you pronounce his name, right? He says, you know what? We can't. He's leading his people. He said, we can't go down to Jerusalem, because if I tell my people go down to Jerusalem and worship in the temple of Suleiman alayhi salam, that's where the main temple was, the main masjid to worship, if you will. If I tell them to go down there, guess what? They're going to like their king more than me, and they're going to get too attached to him. So he says, you know what? What I'm going to do, he comes up with this great thought, at least what he thinks is a great thought, that I'm going to make 2 temples in the north, and I'm going to put these idols. Once again, they have this infatuation with golden calves. I don't really understand it, why you love cows so much. I'm not too sure. But this is all biblical references. It's not like we're making them up. And I even cite the stories here in the Bible, the book of Kings here. He decides to make 2 golden calves for the people to worship. Okay, this is the king of the people of Bani Isra'il, at least on their nation, right? And the thing is, when we think about Israel, we think about, oh my gosh, a really religious group and everything. It's not. That's not how it is. One thing, same thing, unfortunately, with some of our Muslim countries. Also, a Muslim country, you think everyone's praying and everyone's worshiping, and it's like, Jannah on earth. Like, no. It's like there's segments of that, and then there's concerts going on over here, and there's some other stuff going on over there, type of stuff. You know what I mean? The leaders, mostly in history, as you know, are never the most religious. They're, pride, arrogance, and money kind of changes people, and when you have power. Same thing over here. Why did he make the golden calf? Because if they go to other leader, they're going to like him, and I need to keep my power. So let me make a golden calf. But it's not just his fault. The people going to say, like, hey, I don't want to worship a golden calf. They say, oh, yeah, let's go. And they start worshiping it as if, they don't even give it a second thought. It wasn't even that they were worshiping. It was other gods. It was God called Baal, right, that they honored and worshiped in the kingdom also. It's all from the text currently in the Bible today. You can open up and you can read it verbatim, that this is what they worship and this is what he did. This is not us trying to make them look bad or anything like that, okay?
This is Brother Joan, sorry.
These type of things in the kingdom, they had multiple gods, honestly. It wasn't just these 2. I'm just highlighting these right now. And that you can see their kingdom was based on corruption not abiding by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and so forth. I got some.
It's Brother Johan. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah.
Are you familiar with when Jesus used to come and flip the tables because he was told not to make the sacrifice?
It wasn't. Sorry.
It's all right. Are
Wasn't.
you familiar with when he flipped over tables because he was told not to make in a marketplace?
Yeah, in the yeah.
Yeah. Was that during this time?
No, this is later on. This is around. So this is before his birth. So BCE, before Common Era. So Common Era is when he was born, 0, if you will. So we're 970 years before he was even born. Yeah. So we're gonna get there, which is a whole nother thing that you're bringing up. Yeah, definitely.
So by this time, are they following Zabur or Torah?
Zabur, remember, it's more like a bunch of reminders of character and reminders of God Almighty and stuff like that. The Torah has always been their law that they need to follow. You're going to see they're going to come back to that in following to extent. But right now, they're not really abiding by it. One thing you have to understand that right now, the Torah is not in a written form yet. Okay. It's been almost 600 years. You could say maybe 700, 600 years that Musa passed away, that they have no written form of the Torah. Okay. One thing about, we have aspects about this in Islam where we talk about the Quran, right? We say we don't want to touch it. You have to have wudu, right? It's a book, put it on like a high place. The Jews are like 10 times like more to that, where no one should be writing the Torah because it's God's words. Who has the right to do that, right? We're going to talk about a little bit this in 2 weeks from now, where they didn't want to write it on one page and write it on the back as disrespect. So what they did, they wrote it on one big like scroll. Have you ever seen these scrolls that have like 2 handles, right? Because they didn't want it. Like that's how you might say that's super silly. But once again, they said this is God's words. So even today, they won't say the word. They won't, and they go to some of their websites. They won't say the word God. Yeah. Or if they write it, they put a G and they put a space where the O is supposed to be, and they'll put a D because they're like they don't want to, do that.
Is it so sacred?
It's so sacred, but it's like going to a silly extent that you might say that, right? Sometimes you see that little aspects in Islam a little bit, where the Quran is there, put it on the highest table that we have, or the a cabinet, and no one ever touches it. No one ever reads it because it's up. No, it's for you to read. It's okay to hold it. I mean, we have talk about you have to wudu to touch it and so forth, but not to the point where like who could read it, who could write it. Like, what I mean? For them, that's something that's very special. No one should be writing this type of things, if you will, or even say the word God.
This Brother Johan, can you hear me?
So that's the reason why. But that's kind of showing up here a bit to some extent. Going back, okay, that was your question, yeah. So they're worshiping other gods. At that time, come on, you do it. Let me make sure that was the right slide. Okay. At that time, where the northern and the southern kingdoms are, to the east of it, we call the Assyrian Kingdom. Okay, right, where the current country Syria gets its name from, has no relationship to it today, but it's a massive kingdom called the Assyrian Kingdom. Okay, the Assyrian Kingdom has a lot of interest on what's going on in the West, and they want to conquer like any empire in the history of mankind. They want to conquer more lands and conquer more area around them. That's what kind of empires do. Okay, so around 740, the Syrians go into the northern kingdom and want to try to conquer it. Okay, their leader at this time is Tiglath-Pileser III, right? He wants to go in there and conquer that area there, just to, that's what they kind of do, like I mentioned, right? There might be riches or other things, if you will. It's mentioned that they lay siege to the city for 3 years. 3 years is a lot, right? To lay siege to a city, right? People are trapped in there. This depiction here, what we're seeing right here in this, this is now, which is nice that we don't have to rely on the Bible all the time. Archaeologists have found inscriptions of the Assyrian Kingdom that in their palaces, they will write their history on their walls, and which is good because rock doesn't really, deteriorate as writing it on papyrus paper, which the Jews would do, or Bani Isra'il would do. And that's why we lost our history a lot. So this is not necessarily what's on in the Northern Kingdom. But what it shows here that this Tiglath-Pileser, you see him right here, is fighting. He's like a walled fortress right here, right? And they're fighting it. They're ramming it here. this thing called impaling. I don't know if anyone knows what impaling means. It's kind of a really bad thing. Impaling is when you take someone and you put them on a stake and they die that way, and you put it around the city. Okay, so they impaled people, and what that does is kind of scare the citizens. Like, if you want to try to fight back, look at those people around the city that are on stakes dying. Okay, it's really kind of a little bit terrible, atrocious thing to do. But you can see people are being impaled here on these stakes here. You see some person right here that is praying, like, please don't kill us, right? And so this is their history that they're showing as they are defeating this, this area here, whether this is what's going on in the Northern Kingdom or not. You see people again thrown off to the sides. You see the Assyrians are coming up on ladders and attacking it. They're getting thrown down, upside down, and being killed. And so the Assyrians come in. First of all, they come in there and they just say, we take over the land, but the Bani Isra'il stays. Bani Isra'il says, you know what? Their leaders say we want to fight against, the Assyrians and their leader. Once they do that, then that is when they come in and they defeat the city and they take over their whole kingdom, and the kingdom is defeated. The Syrians are, like I said, they're a little bit, let me just follow my notes here. What we mentioned is that there was 10 of the tribes in the blue area, right? 2 of the tribes in the orange area. What the Assyrians do, they take the people of Bani Isra'il in the northern area, and they exile them to the Syrian Kingdom, which is like modern day Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan areas, if you will. And they take them over there and they put them all through the kingdom. They scatter them around, and of course they make them as forced labor, as most people do when they imprison people and they exile them. They make them the workers in the land. What's important about that is that when they spread them around, you go to this city, you go to that city. For example, you go to Los Angeles, Texas, Nevada, San Francisco. Bani Israel gets what? Spread out. So they're not living all together. And that's why they call them the 10 lost tribes of Israel, because they get split up and then they start intermarrying with the Assyrians and the normal people, and their lineage gets broken up and they're gone. And so 10 tribes are just wiped out of the history of Bani Israel. We don't know where they're at. Maybe there's some claims today where they could somewhat trace them, but they get scattered out. And the Syrians did something. We're going to see the Babylonians do the opposite, where they pretty much wipe out that nation or those tribes. We're going to see.
So we all know Syrians, but Assyrians, weren't they the first Christians? And if so, did they fight with the Romans ever? Because the Romans were against the Jews. Yeah.
So this is the time of Isa al-Islam, or Jesus peace upon him, after that. So we're way in like 900 years before this.
Sorry.
Yeah. So we're going to get to that. Yeah. Of where the Christian, how that spread and so forth. But so that's coming up. Yeah, I know. So we're really, really way before any of that stuff even shows up right now.
I was just thinking that my father was saying that he can't hear. Oh, he can hear you, but he can't. When he speaks, you can't hear him.
Oh yeah, I can't. That's true. Thanks for the. I'll read your, Brother Johan. Let me read your. You can type your question, I guess.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
The volume. The volume is 100%. Okay. I tried to ask a question, but it seems they can't hear me. I just did. Okay. Maybe if you could type it. I don't see a question here, or you could text Amir. Either way. And I could try to look at that, inshallah ta'ala. Let me just minimize this text box here, so if anything does come up, I could see it. Okay. Also in this kingdom, there was mentioned, though, there was 20 in the 210 years, there was 20 leaders that came to the monarchs, if you will. You can see that, people, you never want to be a king in those days. Like, either your son's going to kill you, or your brother's going to kill you, or someone's going to, want that power. So they went through multiple leaders during that time before they even, were conquered, if you will. Okay. Going back to the exile. Okay. So they're all exiled in these different areas. It shows them kind of here in this picture here, that you see them, that there is a Syrian king there, and this is Bani Isra'il with their sacks on their back, getting exiled out to the Syrian Empire. Okay. This is Tiglath-Pileser, a picture of him. That's super significant, but anyhow, it's like you had a watch, but I know it's kind of interesting. But that's kind of show that's where they're leaders, and that's what the Syrians. It wasn't just him that defeated it; it was the next leader after that came after him that also just defeated them, if you will. The Syrians, what they also did, is they worship different gods. Ashur was one of their gods that they had. They brought their gods into the lands now of that blue area of the kingdom of Israel. Okay, and guess what Bani Israel did? Those that stayed in the land and wasn't exiled out, some of them stayed, is that they started worshiping that idol also, right? They said, hey, guess what? Everyone else will do it, we'll do it also. And so that idol worshiping spread even more in those cities. How about the kingdom of Judah, right? We talked about them. What's going on? So Assyrians came and defeated here. What is the kingdom of Judah? Why didn't they go and defeat the kingdom of Judah? So what's happened is that the kingdom of Judah learns their lesson, and they talk to the Assyrian king and say, hey, we'll pay you tribute, right? We'll basically pay a tax. We'll give you X amount of gold and so forth. Just kind of leave us alone. And we will be your helpers. That, you know what? We don't like those guys in the north anyhow. So, you know what? So, you know, take them out. Hey, we'll give you money. Just leave us alone. And so they played that card, and they played that card very well. Also, you'll see that the kingdoms and the Bani Isra'il from the north, after they're defeated, they try to rally back up. And they go to the other kingdoms above them and other places that also been taken over by the Assyrians and say, you know, let's get a coup, let's get an army to fight against the Assyrians to get our land back. They go down to the kingdom of Judah, right? And say, hey, the king at that time was Agaz. And they say, hey, we're trying to build up this kingdom. We want you to come with us, and we're going to fight against the Assyrians. Guess what the kingdom of Judah does? He sends a letter to the Assyrians, say, these guys are plotting against you. I'm with you. And, you know, we're paying money, defeat them. So this is Bani Isra'il working with Bani Isra'il. Right? You understand this? He's plotting with the Assyrians to go and defeat their uprising. And that's exactly what he does. He sells out his own blood brothers, if you will, which I don't think they really care about them too much anyhow. But that goes on, right? You know, we see a little bit sometimes in the Muslim world, unfortunately, right? There's refugees in one country, the next border country says, no, don't come over here. You know, where did that come from, right? So anyhow.
What region is the one of the brothers?
So over here, they were defeated, right, by the Assyrians. And so after they're defeated, some of the leaders came down to the kingdom of Judah and said, let's get an uprising to fight against the Assyrians, which is to the east. And then their king Judah calls them out, sends a letter to their king saying, these guys are trying to take you over. Send an army to defeat them. I give you money. Like, we're friends. Don't worry. We're not trying to do this. So he sells out his own people. Yeah. So that they do that. So Brother Johan put his question out here. Let me just read it really quick. So he says, what the Bible describes the worshiping of idols as a historical account, it should be stated that I think the Bible does not encourage the worship. Well, of course not. Yeah, at that time. Apparently the Jews and Christians don't worship Chalcedon. Yeah, definitely. No, of course the Bible wouldn't. The Bible, especially during this time, is more a historical book. It's not the word of God, like you have God is saying this. It's someone writing the history of these kingdoms, especially in this book called the Old Testament. It's like you're reading a history book. That's what you're doing, right? There's no one saying that Allah says this or God says this. You know, this is just someone writing the history and it's documented. It's more of a historical book than the word of God by far, very, very far. Go back to this. Okay, right. So Syrian rule over the land no more than 8 years. So they only ruled over that land of the north only for 8 years. Okay, why? Because the Babylonians are going to come and kill them. But anyhow, so this kind of shows you the Assyrian Empire. It was all this like green area. No one liked this area here because it's pretty much all desert. Okay, so they would take people from Samaria, which is the capital of the north, right? Put them all the way of this area of Gozan, this area here, and Navivia. This is where it's mentioned that Yunus alayhi salam was from, this area here. Just a little side note, right? And they will put them all through these different areas and put them in this, you know, quite far away from the lands of where they're originally from, scatter them around. Okay, so they ruled this very large area here, all the way down. Remember the kingdom of Judah down here, it's in green here because they pay tribute. So it's like, you know, you're a state of ours, but we're not at war with you because you're paying us money. Okay, even all the way down to a little bit of Egypt. Okay, so that's the Syrian Empire there. Israelites are exiled to Gozan and Midian, or this area here, way over here, okay, which is almost like quite Persia area, modern day Iran, right? So that's why today, if you look and you see that there's a good population of Jews today in Iran, Okay, they're mixed there, but they have a strong community. Bit of a side note, where the Prophet ﷺ mentioned in the hadith, when the Dajjal comes, the Antichrist comes, he'll be followed by 70,000 Jews from Asfahan. Asfahan is that area of Persia or modern day Iran. Okay, and they're very staunch with their belief, right? I'll just leave it at that. So you can kind of see how this is even starting where they're at there, if you will. Yes, they call the lost tribes. It could be that they got there at this time or maybe later on. That I don't know, right? But there is Jews in that area there. Like I said, whether they was from this time or 100 years later, I'm not too sure about. All right. So the king of the kingdom of Judah was asked to defeat the kingdom of Israel, to join it together to overcome the Syrians. The king objected and informed the Syrian king, basically sold his brothers out. Okay. So that's what went on with the Assyrians and who they are and what they did.
Is that the same case for the Jews in Iraq? Like, why there's no Iranian Jews today? Same thing.
Yeah, it could be. It could be from that time. I mean, it's hard, and maybe I shouldn't even brought that up, but because now we're talking about, this is 900 years before Isa alayhi salam was born. We're in 2024, so we're talking about almost 3,000 years ago, right? Is that because they were migrated now, or did it happen, in the 1800s or the 1700s or 1600s? That I'm not too sure of, if you will. Yeah, but at least it shows some type of indication. Their seeds are there, if you will. Sorry. Oh. All right. The fall of the kingdom of Judah. So now let's go to the kingdom of Judah. I already kind of broke the news there by that title, but anyhow, after the fall of the Syrian kingdom, so the Syrian kingdom, they get defeated by the Babylonians. Right? Babylonia is something where the area where Ibrahim alayhi salam was visited when he was alive. So it's very, very old kingdom. Ruled over it's in a ruin over the lands of Palestine. The lands of Jerusalem was conquered by the Egyptian Empire and the Babylonians. So the Egyptians to the west of that kingdom of Judah right here. You have the kingdom of Egypt here. They were contending for this area also. Okay, and the Babylonians wanted it also. So the bit of a fight between them. The Egyptians finally give it up for the Babylonians, is a much stronger empire at that time. They come in there. They come in there first and foremost to take over the land, just like the Assyrians. Like, hey, we're taking it over, right? And they put in a puppet king, and that's it. There's no really destruction of the city. Just like, hey, we're taking it over. Okay, so they take it over that time. They put this king Zedekiah from Bani Isra'il to rule over them, but he wasn't from, once again, their normal ruling class. So people didn't respect him. Once again, he's just a puppet king. But the Babylonians put him in there to rule over that lands of Judah. Okay, Zedekiah with the Jews finally said, you know what, let's make a coup to fight against the Babylonians. We're paying tax to them, which is a large amount of money that's hurting us. So let's just try to fight them. Once he does that, he brings down the kingdom by doing that. Okay? And there's a famous ruler called Ibn Khanizar or Ibn Kongretzer, or in Arabic we say Bukhanasar. He is a Babylonian king that comes over and destroys the kingdom of Judah. It's mentioned that he destroys the palace of Suleiman alayhi salam that's still there, stone by stone, brick by brick, right? Just describes everything. He want to make sure there's no symbol of their leadership there at all. Okay, so he does something that's very, very significant in history. Why is that significant in history for it? Remember, the Jews of Bani Isra'il think that they are the promised what? People. That God chose us. We're in this land finally. We have this kingdom that no one ever saw before about in the time of Suleiman alayhi salam, right? That was the pinnacle. They'll never get to that point ever again. Okay, but now they're seeing that their temple is destroyed. What do you think kind of questions are coming up now? Where is our God? Aren't we chosen? Aren't we promised? What happened to that promise? Why were we destroyed for? Right?
Do you think, just in your own scholarly evidence that you've concluded throughout all your time, I've always wondered, being that the Jews were slaves of the Egyptians, And when they went to Babylon, that's when Kabbalah started.
Mhm.
Given that, do you think culturally, like if anyone comes here, I don't care where they're from, they're gonna start acting like an American, how we act here.
Mhm.
So given culturally they were Egyptian, even though demographically they were Egyptian, do you think that's why they started with the whole, like when all the mysticism and magic
Yeah,
of the pharaohs and all that? Do you think they created their own
It
Kabbalah?
could free from those instances. Could be we talk about the time of Sulaiman alayhi salam when the black magic came in. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about that in the Quran, right? About their following black magic. So that was a direct association there that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes with this type of spirituality type, stuff, if you will. I know you're talking about the Kabbalah. I've not researched that aspect of the Bani Isra'il very much and actually see where did that develop from, where did that come from. I know that's kind of like I don't want to say like the Sufis kind of think how we have our Sufism and spiritualityism, that they have that, but that's not a great analogy, but nonetheless, that's a really strong side of their spiritual realm. I don't know where that's derived from and how that came from. That's a good question though. I'll need to research that.
I'm just trying to connect the dots. The Temple of Suleiman,
Mhm.
is that same where the Isra and the Miraj?
Yeah. So they call it temple, but they changed the name. But it was a masjid. Even Dawud alayhi salam, he had a mihrab. He was praying in there, right? But it's also the capital of their military expansion, and the political decisions are made, etc. But it was a masjid. That's what it is. It's all about Masjid Aqsa. That's what it is. Yeah. That's why today they call it Temple Mount. They call it Masjid Aqsa, and that's where they want to rebuild the temple. So this is what we call the fall of the first temple. They call it the fall of the first temple. Okay. There's going to be a fall of the second temple, which doesn't mean there's another temple. It just means the same temple fell again. And what they're currently doing right now in Palestine, they're trying to rebuild and what they call the rebuilding of the third temple. Basically rebuilding the temple of Sulaiman alayhi salam for a third time. The question you can ask them is that, why did you guys lose it the first two times, right? And what does that tell you about your history and your relationship with God Almighty, right? That's something that, for them to question.
Do we know the location for the temple?
Yeah, so what's understood is that same Masjid Aqsa. I have so this is a kind of it here. I'll try to use my thing. So this is current day Masjid Aqsa. Masjid Aqsa is this whole rectangle is probably the best way to say it. This whole foundation area. It's called the Temple Mount because it's on a mount. It's like an area that's risen up, if you will. Okay. This is what we call the Dome of the Rock, where the Prophet ﷺ went up for the Isra and Mi'raj. Okay, went up from this area. That's not necessarily a masjid, but people go there and pray there now. That's just designating where he went up to the night journey and going up to the skies. Currently, this is called what they call Masjid Aqsa. It's over here. It's a lot smaller, if you will. But when we say the whole area is called Masjid Aqsa, this whole foundation, this whole rectangle, if you will. So what's understand that Sulaiman alayhi salam had his kingdom, his palace in the same area. Dawud alayhi salam also the same thing, if you will, right? And this is where Ibn Khanizr, or the Babylonian king, ends up breaking down. Obviously, there's no Dome of the Rock at that time. I think you guys all understand that. That's all in Palestine, yes. This is Jerusalem, or Quds, we call it. I have a little depiction here. This is what I understood that the second temple that they rebuilt. This is that area here, and this is the present day one that we have. So it's that same rectangle structure. Obviously what was built on there, what buildings and high and lows and so forth is, it's something of a historical thing, but that is the area. Go back far now. Okay, get it. So in 587 BCE, the Babylonian king Ibn Khanizr II conquers Jerusalem. There's a picture here depicting you can see it's like a mount, right? You see going up here that the palace here is broken up. It's on fire. It's being destroyed. And Bani Isra'il is getting exiled to Babylonia. Okay, so they're getting exiled all the way out of the kingdom. It's mentioned that 20 to 40,000 of them were exiled. Now the thing about or 40,000, there you go. The thing about the Babylonians, what they did is that they purposely took the elite of Bani Isra'il. So the priests, the businessmen, if you will, those of the higher echelon of society, took them out of Jerusalem and export them out to Babylon. Okay, and they left the poor in the city, like the farmers and so forth, so they could work for them, if you will. Okay, so they took a lot of them out. They took them out of there. They put them over there. Some fled to Egypt, right? A small minority went to Egypt, and a lot of them actually stayed inside Jerusalem, stayed inside the kingdom of Judah because they were the poor class. They didn't really, no one really cared in terms of taking them out. Now, when they took them out, here, I'll come back to this in a bit. When they took them out, once again, they take on this long journey all the way over here into these areas over here. You could say present-day Iraq, if you will. Different than the Assyrians, they put them in one area and let them have their own neighborhoods and their own somewhat village, if you will, some areas, if you will. Okay, that is a blessing for them at that time, that the Babylonians did not spread them out, that they didn't become the lost two tribes, right? So they were able to stay in this area there, meaning that they kept their identity and they kept their ethnicity and they kept their intermarriage. I mean, they're amongst each other, and they kept their lineage that way. You're going to see that significant because when the Babylonians get knocked out by the Persians, very interesting, the Persians let them come back into Jerusalem. Okay, but they're all well identified who they are, and so they're able to make that transition, right? So they didn't do, unlike the Syrians, the Babylonians let them stay in this one area here and kind of keep their identity and keep their religion and what they wanted to worship, what they wanted to do, and so forth. Let me go back to this part here. Okay, the poor class remained in the land, attended the farms. The house Suleiman was completely destroyed stone by stone. Those exiled to Babylonia lived together, became part of the society. Nebuchadnezzar II died 1 year after the conquer of Jerusalem, but the next leader came and so forth and ruled over. Just a little bit of history about him, what happened to him, if you will. He's known as a curse of the Jews, okay, right? Because he did something which was not supposed to be done, the breaking down of their temple. This is what God promised us, and he was destroyed from that, and he was able to destroy it. So something didn't go as planned, right? Something happened, right? So that's where they're questioning now, what exactly did happen? So we go into their own books to find out, what do they think happened, if you will. So the book of Jeremiah is one of their prophets. Jeremiah is not mentioned in the Quran by name or reference, in a reference that we know of hadith literature, other than by the Jews and the Christians. But nonetheless, it's understood that he's one of their prophets. Now he blames them tremendously for losing their empire and being bad people. So we look at the book of Jeremiah. This is the reading Bible here, right? What does he say? So he says, "So is the house of Israel ashamed. They and their kings and their princes and their priests and their prophets, saying to a tree, 'You are my father,' and to a stone, 'You gave birth to me.'" What does that mean? Shirk. That they're worshiping trees and they're worshiping stone idols. So Jeremiah is saying, you know why you guys got defeated? Because you guys are worshiping these things. Which you think that's what a prophet usually does. So there's some truth there. "For they have turned their back to me, God Almighty," okay, "and not their face. But in the time of their trouble, they will say, 'Arise and save us.'" When they're in trouble, "Oh God, save us." Right? Allah says this same kind of verse in the Quran. Right? People worship idols, and when they're in the boat sinking, then they start reaching out to us. Right? But in the time of trouble, they say, "Arise and save us." But where are your gods that you have made for yourselves? Let them arise now. Allah says, very similar passage of the Quran. Call on your gods now, that your names that you made up and your fathers made up, right? "If they can't save you in this time of your trouble, for according to the number of your cities are your gods, O Judah." Now, how much city you guys have is almost how much gods you guys have. There's tremendous amounts of different gods you guys will worship, right? Because of their worshiping other gods, that's why they were brought down. Once again, I read a little bit more in the book of Jeremiah, number 9 here, where it says, "I will make Jerusalem a heap of ruins, a den of jackals. Will make the cities of Judah desolate without any inhabitants." It's going to destroy it, right? And the Lord said, "Because they have forsaken my law," they don't follow their sharia, they're not following the halal and the haram, they're just doing whatever they want, "which I set before them, and have not obeyed my voice, nor walked according to it." They're not following what is said in their book, but they have walked according to the dictates of their own heart. They follow their halal, they follow their desires, whatever they want. and the Baals, which means, remember I told you there's a god called Baal, right? And also means like these other idols that they had, which their fathers taught them. Okay. So here that is even in their book why they lost their empire, because of shirk. When we talk about shirk, we're saying, how can people that worship an idol, like, I mean, if you know like who God is, very easy. What's that? Why is that such a hard concept? But these people multiple times, right? We saw this, right? Coming after the parting of the sea, they wanted an idol. Then they made the golden calf, right? This, we talked about the leader in the north making 2 golden calves for them. So worshiping idols was a very big thing for them. Okay? That they always kept on doing and so forth. And you could even talk about modern day. They have aspects of that. We could maybe delve into that a little bit later on. Okay. The kingdom of Babylon was very, this is like the whole entire kingdom that they had. It covered all of the northern empire and the southern empire, destroying the temples, the temple of Sulaiman alayhi salam, or the Masjid al-Aqsa, if you will. Okay. If you look in this small area right here, you see this Gaza, right? That they don't touch. For some reason, you see this area is not touched very much at all, which is very historical what's happening today, because that's just an area where the Jews or Bani Isra'il never really had a hold on ever. Okay, you always see a cutout from their history books in that area there. Okay, you think they will want it because it gives you, ocean, area for ships and so forth, right? But nonetheless, it's there. Understand that the Philistines were still living there at that time. Okay, we talked about who the Philistines were last class. So anyhow, so the Neo-Babylonian Empire under the last king, Neo-Babylonian Empire at the greatest territory extent. That's the largest extent of the Babylonian Empire at that time. And this is where they reigned from 626 to 539. So we're 540 years away from Isa alayhi salam. We're almost getting there, right? That's when we will finally get more stories in the Quran. We can actually go back to the Quran and kind of pull away from the Bible a little bit. But right now, we don't really have much information about what's going on in Bani Isra'il after Sulaiman alayhi salam and their prophets. We'll talk about Zechariah in a bit. Allah talks about him. Allah talks about Ayub alayhi salam, which is a prophet during the time. Allah in the Quran doesn't really talk about him dealing with Bani Israel. It talks about his own affairs, that he got really sick and people left him. And then he prayed to Allah and Allah took away his sickness. Really doesn't say too much about his kingship or did he rule or where was he at, right? So like I said, we're kind of we have a big gap until we get to Zechariah. We have a little aspect about Zechariah in the Quran. And then, of course, Isa alayhi salam. Yahya also, which is mentioned there. I want to refer to this verse in the Quran. This is one of the most popular ayahs right now, especially after October 7th, okay, that everyone's really looking at and kind of finding out what did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mean about this ayah here, okay, and why is this so significant to us, okay? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in Surah Isra, chapter number 17 in the Quran, verse number 4 to 7, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and we have conveyed to the children of Bani Israel, the children of Israel, in the scripture, that you will surely cause corruption in the earth twice. Yeah, okay. Oh, good. Oh, yeah, I'd like to know about that then. I've not found that out. Okay, good. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that you're going to cause corruption in the earth twice. Okay. Follow with me. Next slide, I'm going to break it down. And you will surely reach a degree of great haughtiness. That means what? You only get haughtiness when you have a big kingdom. Look, we could defeat anybody. No one could touch us. Right? Arrogance, if you will. So when the time of the promise came of the first of them, we sent, when you guys had the first kingdom, okay, you guys had that haughtiness, we sent against you servants of ours, those of great military might, that they probed even into your homes, and it was a promise fulfilled. So you guys had this corruption, you had this big kingdom, right? And you were haughty, meaning that it was corrupt. Wasn't that you guys were humble, Allah is saying. You were haughty. So, you were mentioning worshiping these idols and other things, if you will. And then Allah is saying, servants of his came and destroyed you guys. Came into your homes and brought you guys down. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, then we gave back to you return a victory over them. Then you are going to end up defeating those same people again. Okay? Follow me so far? And we reinforced you with wealth. Now, after you guys defeat them, now you're going to have wealth, and you had sons and made you more numerous in manpower. Now you're even bigger than before. Right? A lot of wealth, a lot of manpower. And said, if you do good, it's for you do good for your own selves, and if you do evil, it is for your own selves. And then when the final promise came, this is the second one. We already done with the first one. They're haughty, defeated by some servants, and then they took over those. They end up defeating those servants again. Okay, people are excited about this story. MashaAllah, right? It's good. Yes, build some more suspense. I like it. Okay,
Is that talking about the Syrians destroyed?
well, that's good. We're gonna get that. This is number one. There's $1 million question right now. Everyone's looking at right now. Okay, then when the final promise came, we sent your enemies to sadden your face and to enter the masjid, or they will call the temple, in Jerusalem as they entered it the first time, and to destroy what you have taken over with total destruction. Okay, so let's look at this really quick. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that you will cause corruption twice, meaning that you will have two different corrupt kingdoms. Okay, one kingdom corrupt, second one corrupt. First kingdom, what did Allah say? You can get destroyed by our servants, ibadullah, okay, our servants, with a great military might. But then you will gain victory over them. Okay, so now you're back in power. Second kingdom, wealthy, mass population. The same group will the same group that destroyed the first kingdom will enter it again. And they'll enter that temple, they'll enter the masjid again. If you go to the classical books of tafsir, okay, which were written way before October 7th, or way before 1900s, okay, or 1800s, they will say that this is talking about the Babylonians. The Ibn Khanizar came in, destroyed the kingdom. We all know that was a great kingdom, right? Sulaiman alayhi salam, and then after that, deteriorating a little bit, it was two kingdoms now. But that was the Babylonians. They have great military might. They defeated you. Now, we gained victory over them. That is not really historical. We never have Bani Isra'il defeating the Babylonians. Babylon gets defeated by, we'll see that the Persian Empire will come. The Bani Isra'il does not defeat them. So that puzzle piece doesn't really fit there. Okay. And then the second kingdom, when is that? Is that already come already, or that's already went? The Babylonians obviously are gone from history. There's no way that they came there again and entered the masjid. Okay. Some said that it was when the first Babylonians came and they conquered the land, but they didn't enter it. They taxed them. Remember that? They taxed them. And then they left. And then the Jews, the Bani Isra'il, made a coup, and that's when Ibn Khanizar came and squashed them. Okay. But if they taxed them, did they gain victory over them? Not really. Right? That part is missing there. So the Babylonians and Ibn Khanizar doesn't really fit the puzzle piece very well. Okay. So there's even conferences, a conference that happened in Malaysia, maybe a couple months ago, where Noman Ali Khan and some other scholars, and all they talked about was this one ayat. These 3 ayats. We could say 4 ayat, 4, 5, 6, and 7. What does it mean historically? Has it happened yet or not? Right. So some are saying that maybe this is maybe happened already. We have the Romans defeating the Jews, which is on sister. She was mentioned. No, she's on there, but she was talking about that. That's one thing. We'll talk. We haven't got that yet. Where the Jews have a bit of a kingdom, the Romans come in and squash them, right? You do have Umar ibn Khattab later on comes in after the death of the Prophet ﷺ and enters Jerusalem. Okay, the Muslims lose Jerusalem though, but not by Bani Isra'il. They lose it to the Romans, right? So how does this work out? So some are saying that maybe this one is done already, but this second one is what's kind of coming right now. Of course, every nation that came and every people that come and read this ayah throughout history say, it's happening now. Or that just happened because they can't see the future. So we now in 2024, or 1447, I think Islamic calendar, maybe I'm wrong, are thinking that, hold on, this is maybe what's happening right now. That they definitely have a lot of money, a lot of our money, our tax dollars, unfortunately. Mass population, I guess so, to an extent, that's relative, right? Is that same group going to come in and enter the masjid again as they entered before? Who could that be? Or the Muslims, if you will. Okay. So hasn't this ayat, has this one here, this final promise hasn't been fulfilled yet. Allah's saying when it is fulfilled, He didn't say it was fulfilled, right? But He's saying that when it's fulfilled, then they will come in and do this. So is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talking about past, or he's talking about something in present? Okay. So this is something just to determine, is this what's going on today? Is this why they're going to build up and the Muslims are going to be able to enter the masjid? Right now, could they go to the masjid? They go in the masjid right now. They pray in the Masjid Aqsa. Is the Jews trying to stop them from not going to the masjid? Of course. Are they trying to build a temple and crush this whole area here and build it on the top of it? 100%. That's what they want. They want to destroy Masjid Aqsa, the Dome of the Rock, and build that temple again. And they believe then their Messiah will come. It's one of the signs of their Messiah. So they will do anything to do that.
I heard that they're weakening the foundation.
That's another thing, yeah, underneath to break it down, right? That's something I wouldn't doubt it, but I have not have physical proof of that, but it could be that, if you will. I haven't researched it much, if you will. Okay. So maybe when they do, if that's something to come, some people say maybe it's just metaphorical that they are stopping. A lot of people not everyone could pray in that area right now. You have to be a certain age and so forth. You have to be from certain cities, etc. So maybe that's already happening right now. And so now we're ready for the second group to come in. Of course, for us, we would like to end this right now because we're seeing really bad things. Or this hasn't happened yet. And it's just going to get, unfortunately, I hate to say it, a bit worse. Everyone loves predicting history and makes it sound really cool and nice, but Allahu Alam, I cannot stand up here and say this is happening yet or it's going to happen, etc.
Is it prophesied that Masjid al-Aqsa will one day be destroyed?
It could be understood from this ayat here that it says right here, they will enter it the second time. This other army will come the first time and destroy what you have taken over with total destruction. It's understood that we could maybe understand that they built this third temple and they come in there, the Muslims or what, and destroy that, if you will, and make it back a masjid where it's supposed to be.
Because it is in the Quran that Palestine will be free.
That's something that's a lot of hadith about this too. Yeah, I mean, hadith mentioned that. Yeah, definitely the Dajjal is going to be killed in Jerusalem, and the Mahdi and the Muslim army will take over that. That's stamped and done in stone. What time that's happening, Allah knows best, right? That we don't doubt. Whatever, that's quite clear, right? So anyway, yeah.
Sir, can you explain that second part of the verse again? Because I'm a little confused. So you're saying that it's implied that it will be destroyed?
Yeah, so it says, when the final promise comes, we sent your enemies to stat in your faces, shame you, etc., defeat you, and to enter the masjid in Jerusalem as they entered the first time and destroy what they had taken over with total destruction. So destroy whatever you have, what they taken over with, they're going to destroy that, whatever you built, right? So is that third temple? Is that the city of Tel Aviv or other places, or what all the other neighborhoods are taking over around it? There's so many possibilities there. What does it exactly mean? So there's a lot to say.
So the first temple is a temple of himself?
Yes. No, so we're just going to go ahead a little bit here to answer your question. The first temple, the King Sulaiman alayhi salam, Ibn Khadijah comes and destroys it. The second one is when the Persians defeat the Babylonians. The Persian leader, his name is Cyrus, does something very interesting. He lets all the Jews go back to Jerusalem. He helps them, gives them money, and helps them support to build the temple again. That's what he called the second temple. It's called the second temple. It's the same thing. It's all Masjid Aqsa. That same, where Sulaiman alayhi salam had. We call it second temple. It's not like a second one. It's just a second rebuilding of it. It's a bad name. I don't know why they call it that. So the second rebuilding of the temple. So the Persian leader, Cyrus, he encouraged it and they build it up the second time. Now again, will be destroyed again, passed around by the Roman Empire. Okay, and that's where we currently are right now. It has never been built up after that. Okay, Muslims come in and they built the Dome of the Rock, and they where am I at right here? They built the Masjid Aqsa and all this kind of different type of things. Okay,
So that's not part of
it is, yeah, it is. Yeah. So Sulaiman has this temple here. Ibn Khadijah comes and knocks it down. Okay, they rebuild it at the time of the Persians. The Persians come and say, hey, go ahead, build it. We don't really care. And somehow the leader supports it, which is kind of really interesting. We'll talk about that. So they build it again a second time. The Romans come in later on, smash this down and make it a trash pile. Okay. And Muslims come in later on and they build it, what you currently see here. Not the Jews, though. And so the Jews are trying to knock this down and build build it up for a third time. That's what we're currently on.
Are the Jews more concerned with what's underneath it?
They think that there's some remnants of Sulaiman alayhi salam's temple that's been, archaeologically, like it's been, pushed down through time, if you will, and maybe they could find some remnants of it. But nonetheless, they want that area though. I mean, it's that area they're going to build up. Yes, yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So they're trying to find the books that.
Yeah, I don't know if they want the books, but all the temples, one of their signs for their Messiah to come back and have kingdom on earth. Remember, for the Jews, it's very interesting. We'll talk about their theology in maybe a couple other classes. They truly believe that, heaven's here. It's on this earth, right? And it will start by building that kingdom. And when that Messiah comes, then that is where the kingdom is going to be. That's why they call it the kingdom of heaven. Like people call that term there because they're not going to believe in this, like, you're in another realm, like how we believe. Like Jannah is like another, you wouldn't want Jannah here. I don't think anyone wants Jannah here, right? Even if Allah made it super great, like, it still has, Jannah is a whole nother thing. But for them, it's like here. It's a kingdom that they have and prosperity and so forth.
Is that kind of what Zion is supposed to represent?
Zion is oh my gosh, get the heck out of me. Zion is a mountain in that area there. That's where they get that name from. Even during the biblical times, they call it the daughters of Zion, the area of Zion. And so that's a little bit different. We get into where that name comes from and what does it depict. Where does Zionists come from and so forth.
Are they still searching for that box?
The Tabut?
The Tabut.
I don't know. That's a great question. I've not tried to follow that.
When we invaded Iraq, not to get diverted, but when you said the books, when we invaded Iraq, one thing that the Jews got from Saddam Hussein's basement were the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Oh, is that where it came from?
Miraculously, now they have it preserved.
I know this one. I didn't know if it was
Yeah.
found in there. I have to look that up. Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know Brother Johan said has a lot of things here. Yes. He said most Jews left Iran before and during the Islamic Revolution. Many of them live in Beverly Hills and Santa Monica.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
So do all.
I know Ryan too. Okay. Since Allah speaks in the past tense, will the second kingdom not refer to King Herod's time and then the Roman conquest? Yes, that's the possibility. Alternatively, do we think that the Iranians claim the legitimate try to conquer Israel because they are somehow descendants of Babylon? I don't know. That's interesting. I think they have issues with Israel in general, but I don't know if that's something they care about. I guess there is no tafsir class today. I'm way over my time. No, I have another class I have to get to. All right, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all of you. So know that unfortunately I won't be here next Sunday. So once again, sorry for the breaks. I don't like them either. Got to go attend a conference somewhere. And then we'll come back in 2 weeks, inshallah ta'ala. We make dua. We ask Allah, Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim, Anta Salam. ومنك السلام تباركت يا ذو الجلال والإكرام اللهم صل وسلم على نبينا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم يا رحمن يا رحيم يا غفور. Help us follow the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we accept this class we had today, put in our scale of hasanat and yawm al-qiyamah, make it a proof for us and not a proof against us. Oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we ask you to help us not follow the mistakes of the previous nations before us. Oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we ask you to give victory over the oppressors in the lands of Palestine and Gaza, ya Kareem, ya Rabbil Alameen. Oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, protect the lives of our brothers and sisters, help them rebuild back their homes, give them back more family members that they had before. Oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, end the oppression that they're going through and all through the world where our brothers and sisters are suffering. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamul mursaleen walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Barakallahu feekum. Allah bless you guys. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.